All right, linebacker, Brad, Francisco Manoa. The tackle for loss stat, I got the stats right in front of me, 18 last year. That's like an edge rusher stat. You don't see linebackers getting behind the line of scrimmage, throwing guys for 18 losses in a season. You just don't see it.
Francisco meant so much to this football team last year. It's not even funny. The way he carried our linebacker room, he was literally the only guy we could rely on in that running back room. The next guy you really had up was Corey Flagg, who was a little undersized, who you had to put in certain situations just because of his athleticism and speed running sideline to sideline, really hurt you at times. And you saw that with other guys in the past too. Guys like Michael Pickney, Zach McLeod, Jack Quarterman. These were all good linebackers for us as well. But they also had their weaknesses and deficits. But what you're seeing now with the linebacker room, it is night and day the way it has transitioned in the last two cycles. This is one position group very similar to offensive line and running back, where they're really starting to narrow in on what they're looking for. They have a blueprint, whether it's size, measurables, physique, what you're bringing to the table. And I like our linebacker group. All of these guys have to be, 6'2", 6'3", pushing 230 pounds, all very fast, can run sideline to sideline, all can play coverage, all can run and stop. I like a guy like Cameron Pruitt. If I had to say someone to watch very young on this football team that can really make a statement in this linebacker room, it's probably Cameron Bobby Pruitt, who's a true freshman, who's came into spring and has really elevated his game very quickly. He's a guy from a football IQ standpoint, can really pick up on things very quickly. He also already had the collegiate body coming in to where he didn't really have to put too much more weight on. So he's able to get thrown in there right away and work with the big dogs. And he's coming from the state of Alabama. So that's one of, the top states where you're looking for. Cameron Bobby Pruitt and Cole McConaughey are the two guys out of the state of Alabama who were probably the best at their position. And I have a lot of expectations for both of those guys. But Cameron Bobby Pruitt, Popo Aguirre, who's the backup Mike linebacker behind Francisco right now, who's out in the spring. So Popo's getting a lot of burn right now. Cameron is getting a lot of burn. You also got Bobby Washington, Marcellus Pulliam as well, and Wesley Basaint. If I had to circle one linebacker out of all the guys in our room, it's probably going to be Wesley. The same way I feel about Elijah Arroyo on the offense side of the ball, that we really need to see elevate their game to see what they got. I think Wesley's in the same realm, and he's doing just that. I think from a body standpoint, he's really taken the weight room to another level. His speed has gotten quicker, and he's a guy that played out of Miami Central, so he's able to play against competition week in and week out. I think it's really just about establishing himself and really getting comfortable, right? We talked about it earlier in the show about how important it is to keep your coordinators there because of these younger guys not having to relearn an offense or defensive scheme. And I think someone like Wesley is really going to benefit from that this year. So I'm excited to see what Wesley brings to the table in that linebacker room because, as we know, Francisco is out this whole spring. So it gives someone like Wesley to really show what he can do. And I think at the end of the day, Francisco and Wesley will be your 1-2 punch in the linebacker room. But I think other guys like Popo, Cameron, Bobby, and Marcellus has something to prove as well.
The Saint 44 tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks in 2023. And Brad's looking for more out of him. We kind of skipped over the edge. Let's kind of morph them into the linebacker crew. Of course, Hurricane Bane was remarkable last year, 12.5 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. What are they going to do to complement him, try to take pressure off him, free somebody up on the other side that can really bring it from the other side?
Well, I gotta say, Mark, first and foremost, it's more like you can blindfold and just pick a name out of the hat on this defensive end position and feel very comfortable with. I mean, Jason Taylor really has. I mean, he has everything to work with. Having a Hall of Fame coach like himself, what he's been able to do from a recruiting aspect of really bringing in a lot of talent and stacking that room very quickly. I mean, guy like Ruben Bain, the question you ask is how do you help him? I think those were questions we were asking ourselves all last season, and yet we didn't have an answer for it, but Ruben Payne did. I mean, you had guys like Nigel Lee Kelly and Akeem Mesidor who were both out most of the year last year, And those were your two dominant pass rushers before Ruben Bain came in the picture. And Ruben Bain was still dominant even with those guys not being there. Well, now you fast forward to now, we're talking spring ball. Najee Kelly, Akeem Mesidor. Those are two guys that are not here in the spring right now, but once fall camp comes, again, competition is going to raise to another level. You bring in a transfer guy in Elijah Austin out of Marshall, who's going to be a big time guy for us. I think everyone in the building expects a huge performance from Elijah Austin, very similar to how Greg Russo and Jalen Phillips was for this football team. I think someone like Elijah Austin could do just that. It also gives you the opportunity of not having to move Ruben Bain around and really to have him really start to cement himself in at one position to where he can really capitalize and start to get comfortable there. And that's only going to elevate Ruben Bain's game to another level. But when you talk about the pass rushers, we said Najee Kelly, we said Mesidor and Bain, but then it also brings in other guys. What are guys like Jaden Wayne going to do for this football team? Jaden Wayne, coming out of IMG, was one of the top defensive linemen in the country a couple cycles ago. Mario Cristobal was able to flip him from the West Coast and bring him over just because of the recruiting aspect. This is a young man that he was recruiting since eighth grade. Him and Riley Williams both. So that goes to show you what Mario Cristobal does on the recruiting front. But Jaden Wayne is going to have to prove a lot this upcoming year to be able to get in the mix with things because you got some young guys in. I mentioned Cole McConaughey, who's a little banged up right now, but he is going to cause some havoc once fall ball comes. But you also got Booker Pickett Jr., Elias Rudolph. You got Marquise Lightfoot, who's in spring right now, who's really going to make some waves, in my opinion. He's going to be a guy to watch. We mentioned Elijah Austin. I think that's really it for the pass rusher group. Other than that, most of your guys are interior guys. You got Thomas Gore, Justin Scott, Armando Blunt, Ahmad Moten, Dalen Russell, Thomas Gore, Anthony Campbell, C.J. Clark, Marley Cook. Those are all interior guys. But I like what we're going with the pass rushers. It's going to be very interesting to see how we utilize these guys come August 31st against Florida because Florida is a team that they're very inexperienced on the offensive line. The only experienced guys that they are bringing back are two or three, I believe, and none of them are playing the same position they played last year. So, from a continuity perspective, from meshing and gelling together, this is going to be a brand new O line for Florida. So, we're going to need to capitalize similar to how they were able to do against us in Orlando a few years ago.
And you pretty much know where you're going to be able to find Graham Mertz. He's going to be standing right in the pocket, so you pretty much know if you can beat your man where Graham Mertz is going to be. He's not going to get away from you, so that's an advantage too. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brad. You hit on the transfer portal in terms of how aggressive that this team will be post spring. Do you think cornerback is a primary spot where they will probably go after a guy or two?
Yeah, I think right now the secondary is looking like probably the biggest improvement that needs to be made. A lot of that, honestly, though, just has to do with bodies. We don't have that many bodies in the cornerback room right now. I think we only have 4 or 5 guys that were able to rotate in spring ball. We got 2 or 3 guys banged up that will be coming back after fall, and then we got 2 or 3 guys coming in as a true freshman. I'm really anticipating what Ryan Mack could do. Maybe not his first year in the program, but maybe his second or third year. This is a guy that really has all the intangibles from a football IQ, from a talent standpoint. He's just a little bit slim once he gets into a football weight program at the college level and puts on some weight. I think he could turn into one of the best cornerbacks we have in the room. But I will say a guy like Dylan Day out of the state of Louisiana, who was a Lance Guidry type of guy, he is someone that's making a lot of headway here in spring. He's not necessarily a true cornerback. He's going to play more of that nickel safety position. But as we know with a Lance Guidry defense, that's the most important role on that defensive front. He's going to be a guy that's going to be a chess piece and moved all around the field. We're using Dylan Day and Mish Powell in that spot right now. You're used to Corey Couch and others being there in years prior. I think Jaden Harris was there last year. No, not Jaden Harris, Jaden Davis. Jaden Davis was the guy in that spot last year. But I'm expecting a very big improvement. But when it comes to the recruitment, I think you're going to go after a guy in the secondary. You need a guy that could just make plays. You need someone who is established, in my opinion, someone that when he gets on the football field, the offense and the quarterback has to look out for. I don't want to bring in another rotational piece on that secondary, in my opinion. If we're going to go after a guy, make sure it's a guy that you could capitalize on and potentially be a day one starter. Because I think when we brought in Mish Powell, the original take for him was to be that starting safety alongside of maybe Zaquan Patterson or Jaden Harris. But I think they're starting to realize that Mish Powell is a chess piece type of guy, and they're using him a lot in that nickel spot, like I just mentioned with Dylan Day. I mean, I think he's going to be a key that first game going into Florida at the slot position. So I want to bring in preferably a safety if possible. But wide receiver is going to be another group that they're going to look at in the portal as well, heavy.